Welcome to All the Ability with Nikki.
Hey!
The show that informs, uplifts, and celebrates people of all abilities.
Because everyone deserves a story, y'all.
The show that asks the question, what does Long Island have to offer people with special needs and disabilities?
That part.
And here's your host, Nikki Johnson.
Girl! Welcome back to All the Ability on WRHU Hofstra Radio. I'm your host, Nikki Johnson, and today we're talking about what behavior analysts actually do and how families right here on Long Island can benefit from that support. Joining us today is Diane Pena-Shuffler, a board-certified and licensed behavior analyst who works as a behavior consultant in a Long Island school district. She provides both school-based consultation and home-based ABA services and is a passionate, helpful person who is trying to build children's independence, confidence, and meaningful life skills. Hi, Deanna.
Hello. How are you guys doing today?
We are all good, and we are anxious to hear what you have to offer.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
And for the listeners who may not know, what is a BCBA?
So a BCBA, or Board Certified Behavior Analyst, is basically a person who looks at behaviors that children are exhibiting and determines why that behavior is happening and how we can make that behavior either continue and build so it can continue to increase the independence, or if it's a negative behavior they want to decrease, how can we decrease that behavior and replace it with a more supportive or functional behavior?
All right. Okay. So what does a typical day look like for you in a school district?
My day really is different every day. It really depends on how the students come in. You know, some days everyone's on their A game and kids are superstars and there's minimal support needed. Other days there's a full moon and everyone is just having a hard time. And I am assisting with crisis. But the same theme every day is that I'm supporting teachers and helping the students access the curriculum and be able to be successful in a public school rather than a specialized school.
So you go in the classroom, like if something happens, you're called?
Yes. So if a student is having a difficult time, I'm called. I'm part of the crisis team. I help de-escalate the behavior. And when there isn't a behavior happening, I may be observing to see what we can do to increase something or decrease something. I create visuals for students and teachers. I make social stories.
Wow.
Token system, reinforcement system. So it's a little bit of everything that I do every day.
What are the ages that you work with?
I am currently in a pre-K to fourth grade building, but I also do parent training and home services for teenagers. So really I have experience with all ages.
Okay. And what got you into this field?
Everyone has that special story. I grew up with a baby sister who has Down syndrome. Okay. And growing up, I remember her going to OT, speech, PT, and all her related services, but we had a lot of issues with her at home behaviorally. If anyone is lucky enough to be loved by a child with Down syndrome, they know that kids with Down syndrome are a little bit stubborn.
As we all are.
So we had a little bit of a difficult time with her behaviorally at home. And I remember thinking like, wow, she goes to speech to work on speech. She goes to OT to work on her fine motor. She goes to PT to work on her gait. Why isn't there someone who comes to the house and helps us with behavior?
Yeah.
So as I grew up and went through high school, college, I realized that this is a field and that I would love to be in it. So that's how I kind of got into it.
That's amazing. That's a great story because, it always starts with a loved one.
Yeah.
And it makes you, I see your heart with that. That's amazing.
Thank you.
So let's see the tea of the day.
Ooh.
Today's tea that we will be sipping on is, we often say behavior is communication, but are we really listening to what children are telling us?
Oh, I love that.
And I actually have my own story.
Oh, tell me.
I actually have my own story because I was a behavior specialist at one point in my life. I started as a direct care provider, and then I became, because I was one-to-one with this one young lady, I became a behavior specialist too because of the work I did with her. And she used to pull her hair.
Okay.
And she used to pull her hair. I don't want to give it away yet. She used to pull her hair, and she would just pull out bald spots everywhere. Their suggestion was cutting her hair, and she had beautiful hair. And I was like, no, we got to figure out why she's doing this. Come to find out, because I'm checking her. I'm like, she's not doing it when she's with me. I'm with her 24/7. When is this happening?
Yeah.
Come to find out, she would go to sleep early, and wake up at like 2 and 3. Nobody's there. The staff is in,
Yeah, she's supposed to be in her bed sleeping.
She's supposed to be sleeping. That's when she would pull her hair. So then when I figured that out, I had the staff try to like entertain her a little later into the night, so she didn't go to bed at like 7 or 8. She was going to bed like 9 or 10. And it stopped the whole...
And you figured out what she was communicating by just observing.
Like they were cutting her hair. Like why? That's not. She's still picked. You know what I'm saying?
Right. They're not shaving her hair bald.
Right. It was. And you're right. I literally watched her behavior. I was like, something's not right. And then I found that out. And then she was beautiful, luscious, thick, gorgeous hair.
Yeah. So I always say being a BCBA means being a little bit of a spy. Because you do have to look and see, like, why are they doing what they're doing? They're not just doing it because they want to.
Right.
They're trying to communicate something.
And I think with her was anxiety.
Boredom.
Yep, that's true.
If she's waking up at 2 a.m. and there's nothing to do in her room, her hair is right there. It's easy access.
Yeah. So that's my little story.
Ooh, I like it.
So that brings me to the question. So what does behavior and communication actually mean?
So when we say every behavior is communication, we're saying that when someone, even you and I, it doesn't have to be a student with a disability. When someone does something, they're doing it to communicate, right? So when I tap your shoulder, it's because I'm trying to get your attention. When a child is presented with a homework and they throw themselves on the floor and start screaming, I can look at that and say, I showed them something they don't want to do, and now they're throwing a tantrum. What could that possibly mean? It means they don't want to do it. Right? So if you really take a step back and you look at not just the behavior that they're doing, but what happened before and what happened after, you can really determine what they're trying to communicate. And we call that the ABC chain: antecedent, behavior, and consequence. When you look at those three things together, it can really help you determine what is being communicated.
Look at us learning something out here, audience. My goodness, I never even heard that term.
Yes.
So what are some common behaviors families worry about that you've seen?
I would say the three biggest behavior, obviously there's plenty of behaviors, but I would say the three that I see often is elopement, when a student or a child leaves the parents' vicinity. So if they're in the community, they run away. That's very scary. I've had students who open the door of their house and they walk out of the door. So that's scary. Aggression towards others and towards themselves. That self-injurious behavior is also a big one, like pulling their hair or biting themselves, but also hitting and kicking and
so what types of things do you suggest when all of that is going on, or one of those are things going on?
It goes back down to determining what they're communicating. So I can have two kids that are being aggressive and are communicating two totally different things. So it really depends on, there isn't a cookie cutter answer for a behavior. It really depends on the circumstances, the triggers, and what really is the core of why that behavior is happening.
So when you walk into the home, what's the first thing you look for?
So if I'm going into a fresh new house that I've never been in, I usually do a pretty intensive interview and intake with the parents just to understand the dynamics of the household, because dynamics also plays a big role.
Right.
Family routines and schedules are different with everyone, so that plays a big role too. And then I like to do observations, and I like to see what's happening, when is it happening. I ask, like you said, is it happening when they're with someone? Is it happening when they're by themselves? Is it happening when you're asking them to do something? Is it happening if they're trying to get your attention? So it's really hard to sit here and say, when this happens, I tell them to do this.
Right.
Because it really is individual for every single family and child.
Have you ever found the family is like, well, we're not changing anything?
I have had many families who've said to me, well, I already tried that and it didn't work. And usually what I respond to that is, did you try it for long enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if this child is 10 years old and they have been aggressive for 10 years, trying it for one day is not going to make a difference, right?
Consistency.
It took 10 years. It took 10 years for them to, it's been 10 years of them doing this behavior.
Right.
One day of intervention is not going to change it, right? So those are, have you tried it for long enough? Have you tried it with fidelity and consistency?
Mm-hmm.
Have you tweaked whatever is not working? Because the intervention itself might be good, but maybe you just have to tweak it a little bit.
Right.
You know? So when I have parents who give me pushback, I say, I am here for you, and I am here to be used by you, right? You are my boss.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to work together, because if you are not willing to try something, then I'm not serving a purpose here. Then I can just leave, you know?
Yeah, no.
But for the most part, I will say, like, when parents get to the point that they're having people go into their house, they're I don't want to say desperate, but they really are at a place where they're in crisis.
Yeah, they need help. Yeah.
So usually I'm received with,
okay,
whatever you say, I will try. And I say to parents, I can make suggestions that you might think, I don't know that that's going to work. But if you give me a chance, we can try it together. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But
right.
at least we can say we tried it.
Yeah, we got to go through all the options.
Yeah.
Because,
yeah.
Okay. So what support looks like for families on Long Island? Is there anything that specifically is happening in Long Island that they can, maybe in the school system, the district, that they can get to help them either in the home or at school?
So if your child has an IEP and has a diagnosis and have services in school, and you're struggling at home, you can always ask for parent training. Some schools will provide in-home parent training.
Wow.
Once a month. Usually the ratio is once a month. Sometimes if they don't have that support for you individually, they do have some sort of group parent training within the school that you can access.
Well, that's great to know.
Yeah. So
I'm sure not everyone knows that.
I don't think so. I hear a lot of parents are saying, like, we're struggling at school. They have all these services we're struggling at home. They have all these services at school, but what about home?
Yeah.
And then parent training is provided for them, and it makes a big difference.
I'm sure, because that's the consistency, school and home. I mean, that's where most, we're all either work, home, we're in two different places, and that's it.
Yeah.
So,
there's also insurance-based services, specifically for families with autism. Mm-hmm. You can do ABA home through insurance.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know, but it's so hard to get staff now, isn't it?
It is.
That's what I in my field.
It's very hard to get quality staff
Mm-hmm.
And consistent staff, but it's worth a shot.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. But how can we fix that?
Training, pay. Like, you're asking some of these technicians to go into the house, and there's students who are aggressive and
right.
are engaging in aggression towards the technician, and we're paying the minimum wage.
Okay, so we got to increase the budget.
It's and this is the issue all around,
everywhere.
right?
Yeah.
Teachers, nurses,
Yeah.
this is the issue everywhere.
Yeah.
But you're getting education too. Some of the in-home staff are high school level people,
okay.
right? So then you're not saying there's anything wrong with having a high school level education,
right.
But when we're discussing very complex behaviors, if there is no further training,
education and training, yeah, okay.
It's difficult.
I see what you're saying. All right. So, what is the function of the behavior assessment in the school? What is what types of things are on there that the families have to tell you about or write about? So,
when we do functional behavior assessments, we're looking at what the function of the behavior they're exhibiting. So, if a student gets referred to me because they're being non-compliant, they're not doing their work, they're throwing tantrums, they're having aggression, right? Then we recommend an FBA, a functional behavior assessment. And that basically means that I do observations, we collect data, I do teacher interviews, I do parent interviews. And then once I have all of that gathered, I sit back and I look at everything and I try to fit a picture and try to determine what's happening and why that behavior is happening. Once we determine that, then we can have a behavior intervention plan.
Okay.
And that is just basically a very structured, detailed plan that tells us how we're going to work on decreasing that behavior and replacing it with a more functional, appropriate behavior.
Wow. And how does a child qualify for school-based behavior support? Like, what things do they have to have?
So if a child is struggling with behavior services, with behavior issues in the school, and they have an IEP, once you go to committee, which is the team of professionals that meet and discuss that child's needs, a behavior consultation can be requested. And that's how I get involved, and then I can support the teacher, the parents, the student throughout the school year.
So they have to exhibit some sort of behavior?
Yes.
Okay. And what is the role of the IEP play in this whole thing? Is that just more...
So an IEP is an individualized education plan. That's what it stands for. And basically students who have special needs, whether it's ADHD, autism, learning disabilities, speech and language impairment, and a slew of other needs, qualify for something called an IEP. And that is where they get their special education services through. So sometimes students need additional support in math or additional support in reading or additional support in speech or counseling or behavior.
Right.
So if you have an IEP, you're basically being monitored monthly to ensure that you're meeting your goals and that you're making the progress that you should be making.
And some of that would be behavior. Okay.
Correct.
All right. Now, before you had said something about there's other options outside of the school and like something with insurance. Like what other supports can families get if they are having these issues?
So if you're going through your school district and you're receiving parent training, that's one option. If you have a diagnosis that qualifies you for insurance base, that's another option. But it's difficult out there, and I love that you're having this show because this is the reason why we need this, right? There's limited resources sometimes for our families. There's private pay, which gets expensive. You can go to a pediatrician and ask for referrals, but most of the time they say call your insurance and get a social worker,
which is not always helpful.
Right. So besides, like I said, school services, insurance services, or going through like getting a therapist or a counselor, if you qualify, you can get OPWDD, but that's a whole process in and of itself. And not everyone qualifies. What
do you think about those therapies that always like pop up and they're like thousands of dollars? Like, have you ever seen things like that?
I've seen that.
What do you think about that? Do you think have you seen anything work, or like what do you think about those things?
I haven't really looked much into it, so I don't want to comment too much into that because I don't want to give misinformation. But, now in the social media world, we are seeing that people are making things up.
Oh, my God.
And they're putting a price tag on it. So there's a lot of things out there that are not science-based and research-based, which is why I love ABA so much, because everything we do is science and research-based.
Great.
We don't just pull things out of a hat and say, like, let's try this.
Right.
Although there is some, out-of-the-box ideas that we have to sometimes try. But for the most part, like, our core principles are all research and science-based.
All right. So then families need to really do their research before they try these quote-unquote therapies.
Right.
That are going around, that are popping up.
Or I love to see the ads that I see. They're like, cure autism with these super gummies. I'm like... That's not a thing.
Right. I've seen one where
but people fall for it.
I know.
And they pay all this money, and then they take these gummies or whatever it is that they're buying, and nothing changes.
Well, I saw one with speech, where they were saying that the child can learn to speak in 24 hours, and I was just like, this could not be true.
How is it possible? How do you have a nonverbal kid?
Right.
You do something, and 24 hours later, it's just magically they're using like sentences.
It's repetition. They're constantly advertising that.
Right. And then when you're desperate enough, right, you say, why not? Let me try it. And then people are going into debt to try all these crazy things. You know, I can't speak for them because I'm not in their shoes. I'm not in their desperation.
But it is sad.
But I do encourage people before they try these things to do their research and make sure that they're not getting, you know, played for.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see. Finish this sentence. This is a little segment I do. The most rewarding part of your job is
just seeing all the progress that kids make. Sometimes when I start on a case and I see the behavior and I you know, the first couple of days or couple of weeks, it's like, oh my God, I'm not seeing the progress. I feel like that imposter syndrome. I'm like, I'm trying all these things and I don't know that I know what I'm doing. And then all of a sudden, a tiny glimmer of change happens. And I'm like, there it is. It's happening. The change is happening. And that is just so rewarding.
Oh, that sounds amazing. Families are often surprised to learn that
progress is not linear. And what I mean by that is sometimes we take steps back. That doesn't mean that it's not working.
That's hard, though.
It's hard. It's hard.
Oh, my God.
It's hard. But it's what it is.
Yeah.
It's not always linear. We're not always going forward. Sometimes we have to take a few steps back to unteach something before we can start teaching something new.
Ooh.
So when parents see that regression, they freak out. But I have to say, it's okay. It's part of the process.
Right. Follow the process. One thing I wish every parent knew is
progress is not linear. Just
that means that so things happen. So I see things must happen.
Yeah.
And you're constantly having to basically
and if
hold
I can
hands
just tell
with
a
the
little
parent.
story.
Okay.
So if you just as a little example, if you think about every time you put a dollar in this vending machine, you get a chip, right? You've learned you put a dollar, you get a chip. You put a dollar, you get a chip. That's something you've learned. It's a behavior you've learned. If I put a dollar, I'm going to get a chip.
Right.
Today you put a dollar and there is no chip. You start banging on that thing and banging on that thing and nothing happens. And you put another dollar and nothing happens. And now you're even more angry because now you're out $2, right? And this happens day after day after day. Then eventually you give up because you're like, it's not giving me anything. That's what I mean. So if a child is having a tantrum, right? And then because they want cookies and you give them a cookie, the tantrum stops. Perfect. Tomorrow they learn, I had a tantrum yesterday. I have a tantrum today. I get a cookie. It happens. Tantrum cookie, tantrum cookie. Then all of a sudden, here comes the BCBA and says, well, when he has a tantrum, you don't give him a cookie unless replace it with either a visual of a cookie or him requesting verbally a cookie, right? So now he's tantruming because he's learned that if I tantrum, I get a cookie. But now you don't give him the cookie. What do you think is going to happen to that tantrum? It's going to get bigger and bigger.
Until you give in.
Right. So parents are often seeing, but if I don't do what I did, then the tantrum just gets bigger and they're just having more aggression and more tantrums. And I keep saying to them, that needs to happen until they learn that they're not going to get the cookie through tantrums. They're going to get the cookie through communication.
Right. So you got to change the whole narrative.
Yeah.
Woo.
It's hard.
It sounds like a lot of work, and I these parents, they go through a lot.
They do, and that's what I'm saying. It's hard for parents to think that that the student's behavior is going to get worse before it gets better, but that happens sometimes.
That would kill me. All right. So, as a behavior analyst working with children and families, what has been your best day on the job?
I can't really pinpoint one day. It's like, those flip books that you, on the corner of the page, you like flip through the book and it like all the pictures move and make up a story. Mm-hmm. If you stop on a random page and you just look at that picture doesn't tell you the story. So I can't pick a day.
Right.
Because it's like just a random snapshot.
Right.
It's like a sequence of days.
And what about like an outcome that happened that you were just like, oh my goodness?
I have this one, I'll tell you the story. I have this one student. I was called to do parent training with his family. He's an older student, and if this family hears this podcast, they're going to know that I'm talking about them. He's an older student, has a lot of delays, nonverbal, still in a diaper, a lot of, physical delays, obviously speech delays, and they called me because they wanted to increase his independence. So I'm doing an observation, and I'm watching the student walk around with his little cup of goldfish, and he's walking around eating his goldfish independently. Then he goes to his device, and he presses cheese stick. The mom goes on the fridge, gets a cheese stick, and starts feeding him the cheese stick. So I said, "Why are you feeding him the cheese stick?" And she goes, "Well, he can't eat it by himself." I said, "Well, why not? He just had a cup of goldfish by himself."
And
She's
he asked for it.
Yeah. She's like, "Well, what if he chokes? He's not choking on the goldfish." She's like, "I've never tried letting him eat the cheese stick on his own." And I said, "Well, why don't we try that right now?" So her concern was that he was going to just shove the whole cheese stick in his mouth. So I said, "Well, that's an easy fix. Cut it into tiny little bite size and put it in a plate for him and see what happens." So that's what we did, and he ate his cheese stick independently. So
I love stories like that.
That's another thing that I tell parents. Look at your own behaviors and how you are limiting your child's independence.
When you're asking for him to be more independent, give him more
right.
independence.
And she never even thought about what he can probably eat this on his own.
Wow.
Because you're so stuck in your day-to-day life that it's hard to take a step back. Right? So then someone else comes in and points out, like, if he can have a cup of goldfish, it means he can cut the cheese stick in pieces and he can eat it on his own.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for
Thank
coming
you for
today
having me.
and helping our listeners know that there are options. How can people find you if they want to get in touch with you?
So you can email me. My email is dkpshuffler at gmail.com. So it's dkpshuffler at gmail.com. Or you can give me a call at 914-689-4204.
Fabulous. All right. Well, if you need help, everybody, you know where to go. Thank you for another episode of All the Ability with Nikki at Hofstra Radio. Bye, guys. See you next time.
Bye.